Hello and welcome everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is the IEC Strategic Dialogue on SDGs. I welcome you to this extremely important strategic dialogue. Before we start, I wanted to give a few housekeeping rules, which is if you have any questions along this interesting strategic dialogue, please use the Q&A section. You can always write down your questions in the Q&A section here. And you can upvote questions, you can see other questions, so please feel free to ask this. While we are all joining, and we are joining from all over the world, it would be fantastic if you just write in the chat from which city, from which area you're joining us today. So this would be fantastic to see from where we come. We have a fantastic amount of registrations today. And also I want to mention that we are live streamed on Facebook today, so you can join also on Facebook. And you can watch the recording afterwards on Facebook or on the IEC website, where we have it on the IEC Academy website. So, so much for the housekeeping rules. I now want to give the floor to Sonia Bird, who's the director of UL, but also very active in the IEC and in the Sustainable Development Goals. So, Sonia, you've got the floor.
Thank you, Jan-Henrik. Thank you, Jan-Henrik, and welcome everyone today. The IEC is a global not-for-profit membership organization. It provides a neutral, independent, and consensus-based institutional framework that allows experts from over 170 countries to collaborate and prepare the technical specifications for quality, safety, and interoperability that underpin infrastructure and international trade in electrical and electronic goods. The IEC International Standards and IEC Conformity Assessment Systems contribute to all 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals. The IEC Council Board recognized in 2020 that the IEC has an opportunity and an obligation to further the work being done to address the UN SDGs. A Council Board task force was established to drive change towards SDG-focused work and SDG-oriented thinking across the community. Hello, everyone. I am Sonia Bird, and I'm a proud member of the IEC Task Force on UN Sustainable Development Goals. I'm also the U.S. representative to the IEC Standardization Management Board and Director of International Standards for Underwriters Laboratories. And it gives me great pleasure to welcome you all today to this strategic dialogue on the UN SDGs. During this session, we will hear from 3 industry leaders on how their companies address the UN SDGs and how IEC work helps them to do so. We look forward to your questions, which will be submitted to the panelists. I'm now pleased to introduce to you the moderator for today's session, Mr. Vimal Mahendru, who is President of Legrand India. In the IEC, he is the ambassador for the UN Sustainable Development Goals and the convener of the IEC Task Force on the SDGs. Welcome, Vimal.
Thank you, Sonia. This is actually overwhelming. I'm reading through the chat box, and there are, I guess almost every country is being represented today. There are folks joining from Australia, Japan on one end, and right up to Peru and the US and some Latin American countries on the other, and all kinds of countries in between. So this is really heartwarming. Thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome, everyone. I know it must be very odd hours for some of you, and I'll just let you know that we have one of our panelists today who's actually up at 4:30 in the morning to join us, and I'll come to all of that shortly. Today, we have more than 650 registered participants. Even more participants are viewing this live on Facebook, as well as there are teams I know in some offices which are coming together to watch this session. To me, this is a sign of how our society is evolving and how sustainability is becoming central to global dialogue. It's not only a dialogue for policymakers or for industry, it is for the whole society together. And the turnout today, to me, is a direct example of that. And this is the reason why I'd love to say we are at the right place, at the right time, with the right topic, and dare I say, with the right panelists. Today, we will not delve into the origins of the UN SDGs or why the global political leadership came together from 196 countries to try and address SDGs. However, today, we will actually be listening to leaders from organizations which have successfully managed to create stakeholder value and wealth, and also shareholder value and wealth by aligning their global strategies to SDGs. This has been exemplary for some of these organizations, and today the panelists are here to talk to us about it. So they have already walked the talk, and today it's about reversing it, talking the walk. They're going to share their experiences, what has worked, what have been the challenges, what has been the success mantra for them to manage SDGs and also bring immense shareholder and stakeholder value. With this, I invite all my fellow panelists to switch on their cameras. Please join me now live, and may I take the liberty of introducing each one of them. Barbara Guthrie. Barbara is joining us from Chicago. She is the Vice President, Corporate Sustainability at UL. Barbara, who's commonly known as Barb also, has been helping ensure safe, sustainable, and secure living and working environment for people around the globe through her 35 years plus experience. Wow. Her experience is in safety science research, regulatory code and standards development, laboratory operations, product and system certification, training and education. As VP Corporate Sustainability, Barb is the visionary responsible for UL's sustainability strategy across the global landscape. Barb serves on many committees and boards, both internally to UL and also externally in various industry and global forums, which include being honored as a corporate fellow in UL's William Henry Merrill Society, of which she has been a past society chair. I also want to introduce Virginie Gattin. Virginie is the Executive VP Corporate Social Responsibility at Legrand and also my colleague. Virginie Gattin is a graduate of HEC and the London School of Economics and holds a master's degree in sustainable development from Paris Dauphine. She started her career in 2001 in international marketing, working for various luxury goods companies, including LVMH. In 2011, she joined the JCDecaux group on, do excuse me if I mispronounce something. She joined JCDecaux group as Sustainable Development and Quality Director. She was then in charge of Sustainable Development Strategy for Heineken before joining Mondelez, where she was instrumental in deploying the company's CO2 emission reduction program. Virginie has been the Executive VP Corporate Social Responsibility at Legrand and a member of the Executive Committee since August this year. Also, I want to welcome my colleague and good friend over the years, Xavier Denali. Xavier, who's actually coming from Hong Kong today to join us. is the Senior Vice President and Sustainable Development at Schneider Electric. Since 2021, Xavier Denoli has been the SVP Sustainable Development for the group. His mission is to lead Schneider Electric Sustainable Development Strategy and to ensure that the group delivers its 2025 Schneider Sustainability Impact commitments. He is also in charge of the Global Environment Strategy for Legrand Group. His other responsibilities involve the development of Schneider's Access to Energy program, on which he and I have had some conversations in the past. Xavier has had various leadership roles in Schneider Electric's industrial automation and power systems business, and then in global supply chain in different markets, as well as recently in charge of Schneider Electric operations in Vietnam, Myanmar, Cambodia, and also Indonesia as cluster president. So welcome, Xavier. Last but not the least, I want to introduce Philip Metzger, the IEC General Secretary and CEO. Philip became IEC General Secretary and CEO on 1st of February 2020. So just in the midst of the pandemic. In his position, he is responsible for the global day-to-day operations of the IEC. Prior to joining IEC, Philip was the Director General of the Swiss Federal Office of Communications, Ofcom, from January 1, 2014, having already served as head of Ofcom's Telecom Services Division since 2007. Previously, he was deputy to the Director of Telecommunication Development Bureau at the ITU, which is the International Telecom Union, and Director of the Trade Relations Division at the EFTA, European Free Trade Association in Geneva. Philip is a Swiss attorney of law and passed his bar exam in 1992. With this, welcome panelists. I think by joining us today, you've made my job easier and more pleasant simply because you are the right people to be here to talk about this topic. And I'm glad that Philip, you are also here on this call with us so that you can bring the IEC experience in the past and also the perspective today as we build toward a sustainable future. Before we go straight in, let me give you a flavor of the kind of format we are planning for today. Of course, there are no more slides and no videos to show. It's a free-flowing conversation. Maybe for the first 2/3 of the time, it's a conversation between the panelists. So please feel free to interject or build on a point. And then we will get into the Q&A. But be sure, if there is an interesting question coming up anytime, we will take up that question there and then. I also have some requests for the audience also. Number one, please post your comments, your observations, what works for you. Give us feedback as we go through the next 90 minutes. Also post your questions so that we can upvote and take up those questions with the panelists. Please share your comments in the chat box, questions in the Q&A box. And last but not the least, also we have some audience polls. Please respond to the audience polls. And with this, I want to go to the first audience poll. Jean, can you put up the first audience poll, please? Thank you. There we have it on your screens. I invite all the participants worldwide to answer these polls and also the panelists, if you want to share your thoughts on this. Wonderful. Good to see that there is a good amount of understanding. So this gives us, the panelists, a bit of a flavor of the kind of audience we have. This is a global, open, strategic dialogue. So stakeholders coming from all walks of life. So it could be policymakers to regulators, to industry folks, to students, to civil society. So, which is, I guess, reflected the way we see the answers to this poll. Wonderful. Thank you, Jan. I think now we have a fair understanding of the kind of audience we have. So we will accordingly take this dialogue forward. With this, let me come to my first question. And this is just a simple question to get us into the mood for this kind of a dialogue. And the first question is maybe some kind of a personal story. You know, I have believed that work on sustainability requires not only a corporate vision, but a personal vision, a personal commitment. So for each one of the panelists, what led you to work on this? What inspires you? What gets you out of bed in the morning to say, hey, I'm going to go and work on this topic? And maybe I'll start with Barbara first.
Thanks, Vimal, and welcome everybody from all around the world. I do want to say it is inspiring looking at the chat and seeing this collective group. I was mentioning earlier, you know, so much came out of the pandemic in such an awful way, but in the same way it brought the world together, and we're seeing that this morning, this afternoon, this evening. So welcome everybody. From the personal story, you know, I kind of like to really think that it isn't that I chose sustainability. It's a little more that sustainability chose me. And it really goes back to when I first graduated electrical engineering, was actually looking at job offers. And yes, that was nearly 4 decades ago, but I was 5 years old at the time. But I was looking at what would an engineer do? What would an electrical engineer do? And there was design, there was research, there was sales engineering. And I talked to my grandma, and I explained to her the different offers I was considering. And as soon as I mentioned UL, she stopped me. She said right away, you know, that's your grandpa's life was saved because of that. And I'm like, I never heard this story. I mean, we never talked about our parents or our grandparents' life before us. And she said, he would have been electrocuted by a toaster, but it was UL certified. Now, very young, I didn't even understand the intricacies of what that means from a standards development, from a design standpoint. But what she said was, that's the company to work for. They make people's lives better. And that to this day is what resonates and drives me. Where UL expanded its own work and mission from working for a safer world to working for a safer, more secure, and sustainable world, that evolution of UL's own mission was the evolution of how I got into sustainability. So it was really still living up to what Grandma said is, you do good and you make the world a better place. So that's what got me into sustainability, was the projectile and the evolution from safety, security, and sustainability.
Wow, what a lovely story. I'm sure your grandma must be really proud and happy with what you're doing. Virginie, what's your, because you even studied sustainability in college.
Thanks a lot, Vimal, and good morning, afternoon, evening to everyone. And Barbara, congratulations on getting up that early. I'm very impressed. I know it's a subject that's worth it, but still really well done. For me, I did, as you said early on, I did 10 years in marketing in the luxury industry and absolutely loved it. But there came a moment where I felt, okay, this is great, this is exciting, but there must be more that I can do. There must be, you know, a bigger vision, something more that I can bring to the company I work for society at large. I want to make an impact. And that's when I decided to leave my wonderful job and go back to university to study sustainability and I'm not saying it's easy every day, and I know we'll talk about it later on today, because it's not a plain sailing journey. It's complex, it's got its setbacks. We don't do always what we want, but overall, I do get up every morning knowing why I'm doing this. It was really about, you go into a company that whichever activity they have, how can I make it better? How can I contribute to the company having less impact on the environment, to the company doing more good for society, for you know, its employees and for people at large. And I think that, for me, was really having that bigger impact in a company was really what made me move and switch to sustainability.
That is so lovely. I think to get up in the morning knowing that the work I do makes the world a better place. Xavier.
Yeah, hello everyone. Xavier from Hong Kong. So for me, a different story. I am a long timer with Schneider Electric, and I was very, very fortunate, to travel the world with my company. I've done many different types of roles. I worked in 6 different countries, and for the past 15 years, I've been working in Asia. And gradually, I discovered sustainability through the angle of inclusion, social inclusion. This has been my entry into the sustainability journey, especially in countries that you can imagine, like Vietnam, like Myanmar, like Indonesia, where the inclusiveness is absolutely key. So I came to sustainability through the S angle, not through the E angle. And at that time, of course, I was part of the E as well, E for environment, because of Schneider Electric, my company. But let's be clear, 20 years ago, nobody really spoke about sustainability at that time. And then what I saw also, a few, let's say, visionary leaders in the company started, to address, all these topics, started around safety, then started to speak about energy efficiency. So Schneider is a real vector for efficiency and a real vector for sustainability. So I understood after some time that my company, and I could hear like everybody else, a lot of noise and information about this dreadful climate change which is ahead. I understood at some point that my company was part of the solution. So having this experience in the inclusiveness, this experience, international experience in new economies, then I thought this was for me the next step of my career. And of course I have children like probably most people on the line. And I thought at this stage in my career, it was important for me to do something that would actually contribute in a very positive manner and being net positive, as we say, to the world. So that's how I came about from business, international business, gradually into sustainability. And today I am leading the global sustainability program for Schneider Electric. Huge challenges, but also even bigger opportunities. So that's why I also get up every morning. Thank you.
Absolutely. What a lovely thought, thinking about children and grandchildren. And the moment you think of it, the moment I think of it, it just inspires me. It just changes the perspective. Philip.
Yeah, thanks, Vimal. It's fascinating to hear the different angles from which my co-panelists are coming to sustainability. I think for me, it's probably even a bit more direct in the sense that, yes, I've in the past worked in both the private and public sector, but I've more worked in the public sector, especially in the later stages of my career. And I always had a strong interest in the common good, a strong interest in understanding how societies work and how they work together. Now, I'm coming from a country in Switzerland where a community building is, of course, a core DNA factor of our society, the way we've evolved as a country, because if you look at our sort of different cultures that come together here in one country, it's not a natural fit. It is a process. And so for me, striving for the common good and striving for, also a public service in a sense has always been a very, very strong motivation factor in what I did professionally. And so in that sense, maybe I'm also hearing myself when I hear Xavier mention the inclusivity, because that's ultimately for me the core task that I love to do: bring stakeholders together, stakeholders with different backgrounds, different interests, often diverging interests, and trying to find common solutions for the benefit of everyone. And I think that in itself is a sort of an aspiration for sustainability, because you want to make sure as a group or as a society that you move forward together, you embrace progress together. And so I think that's what has led me to the path on which I am today, in a very privileged position, I have to say, because I'm really extremely fulfilled in doing that now at the IEC, bringing stakeholders together and trying to design the processes and use the output in the best possible way for the world. I mean, our vision is IEC everywhere for a safer world. And so I think that reflects that aspiration also for me personally. And maybe just a last addition, I think the closest I came to sustainability per se, the way it's now understood, defined, and also embraced by the political processes, the policymakers and the regulators, is when I became a member of the Broadband Commission for Sustainable Development. That is a very interesting group that was created in a public-private partnership setting by UN agency leaders, but also by private sector and state leaders, and where we really tried in the area of telecommunications, communication networks, to come up with approaches, solutions, recommendations, and tools to make the accessibility of the entire globe possible as far as telecommunications is concerned. And so I think that's sort of the angle from which I am coming to this topic, and of course now serving an organization where sustainability will only grow in importance in what we do going forward.
Absolutely. Lovely answer to this question, Philip. And I think this also sets the context, because inclusiveness, which you mentioned, I believe it is resonating also with the political dialogue, which is leave no one behind. And I think so that's where it's all coming together. It's about bringing the entire global community together, moving forward. Now, the same question, let's put it in the business or the work context. Why is your organization excited about SDGs? What led you to take this decision to align with it? SDGs were kind of coined by the policymakers in 2015, but I know that all of you have been working on sustainability even before that, even before the SDGs were on the table. Why? What has been the corporate inspiration for working on sustainability and SDGs? And maybe I go back to Barb again to kick off.
Yeah, and it's such an interesting question, and in studying the question, I mean, we're all on a journey. We said that there are highs and there are lows, and it's not new to many of us. The phrases are new, the terminologies are new, the work we need to do is very new, but yet we kind of had to put it in the right framework and objectives and really make it embedded within the culture and the operations of our company. So within UL, and our journey, I mean, is still beginning. I mean, we actually 3 years ago in 2019 made the decision to transition from what was corporate social responsibility to corporate sustainability. And our corporate social responsibility, like many companies, was the greatness of check writing, donations, volunteerism, giving into the communities in which we lived and served. Recognizing that there was more to it, and we really needed to evolve this, not only as a company offering the services to our customers, constituents, and stakeholders, but internally, it was important for our employees. It was important for our customers. And it was important if we were really living our mission of working for a safer world. So UL, like many on this call today, recognize the importance of science-based standardization. And we know that when manufacturers are looking to design safe products, they look to standards. They look to the IEC standards. They look to UL standards. They look to industry standards. We like having that benchmark, that foundation that we know is built from subject matter experts in order to then start and give us good guidance and direction. Well, the United Nations is just that, an inclusive organization that takes the betterment of the world into account. So even though those United Nations Sustainable Development Goals initially were written for governments, there was something there. They were that collection of the baseline foundation that if we all work together, like number 17, and we partner for these goals, we can make the world a better place, and we can leave the world to the next generation in better hands. So for UL, in the same logical, methodical way we approach product safety, product security, product sustainability systems, United Nations kind of had that framework for us to build upon and adapt. We quickly set a strategy within UL, which was the optimization of our human capital, our brand capital, and our finance capital. And what this simply meant was, we know we have skills in engineering, in science, in research, in marketing, in communications. So if we can harness and utilize the employees, coupled with the brand, the trust that UL comes with the financial back, if we took these and then looked at the UN 17 goals and said, what resonates with us? What means something to our employees, our stakeholders? We had a wealth of information to choose from. We had disclosures that we could dive into were relevant to us, whether it be clean energy, safe water, societal well-being, increasing education, and match them up and map them to what we wanted through the material and relevant to our company and those we serve. It gave us that blueprint to move forward. So it was a very logical, methodical, science way to approach it. The SDGs gave us that framework and really that blueprint for success in sustainability.
Lovely. Virginie?
Yeah, building on what Barbara just said, I think for Le Grand, we see three big advantages to SDGs. As Barbara mentioned, I think it's a great common framework where we all try to speak the same language between governments. It was initially designed more for governments, but I think it's very applicable. So I think having that shared language between businesses, but also with governments, with local authorities, with even clients is really a great tool. The other great advantage of SDGs, and we really see that Le Grand is, okay, there's 17 and it could look a little bit scary, but the best way, in my view, to look at it is which SDGs are the most relevant, or which ones can I have the most impact? Which are the most relevant for my business? Where do I want to make a difference? And that really helps you first look really wide, a really holistic approach. These are all the topics I can look at. And then it kind of helps you focus while still having in the back of your mind, okay, there's those 17 SDGs, so am I not forgetting one? And I think the third point, which is really, really important, is people often look at those 17 SDGs and then stop at the top layer. I'll give you an example. Barbara mentioned it, clean energy. Okay, affordable and clean energy. I'm like, okay, as a company, what does that have to do with me? But if you actually deep dive into the targets behind those, there are really concrete targets where as a company, you can really recognize yourself. So just going back to the affordable and clean energy, 7.2, I'm reading here because I don't know them all by heart, is increase the global percentage of renewable energy. 7.3 is double the improvement in energy efficiency. These become super concrete targets as a company you can set yourself. And there, then it becomes, okay, this is my concrete plan behind. How can I really contribute actively to those targets set by the SDGs? So I think as a company, Le Grand really looks at the SDGs as a great tool to frame the strategy and also set itself targets, and in that sense share it with other companies, acting in the similar sphere of electricity.
Absolutely. It's interesting you mentioned targets and indicators, because within the IEC Council Board Task Force on SDGs, we've actually started now a project to link the work of the committees of IEC and the conformity assessment programs directly with targets and indicators. Because what was happening inadvertently was that people look at the 17 slogans and say, well, which works for me and which doesn't. But the real essence of these lies not in those 17 slogans, but the targets and indicators, because that's where the industry and all the stakeholders can really understand and differentiate between what they can really influence, what they can really work with. Wonderful. Xavier.
Yeah, thank you. So the way we look at SDGs at Schneider Electric is essentially a common language for everyone, right? These are aspirational goals which have been defined to be met hopefully by 2030. The difficulty with addressing those SDGs they are going all over the place, and they are covering many, many dimensions. And no one company alone can address them all. So it's a common language so that each company who is operating, each company has suppliers, each company has business partners, has alliances. So we can walk and work like a pack of wolves, if I may use the analogy, to be able to tackle these goals and get those achieved. At Schneider Electric, we have not waited for the SDG to become a reality. Back in 2015, we have been operating with what we called sustainability barometers for now almost 20 years. And basically all these barometers are cumulative, one after the other, and they are all addressed in the direction of the SDGs with very, very clear commitments made, public commitments, very ambitious commitments, which forces the organization to take a different speed, reinvent the process, reinvent the way we do things. And many of the commitments that we take in order to reach ultimately those SDGs, for most of them, when we take these commitments, we are not 100% sure on how we are going to do that. And that's, for me, the best way of reinventing the company is to set goals which are, at the moment when you set them, almost you have no clue how to get to that point. And the beauty of this exercise is, number one, of course, it's uncomfortable, right? Nobody likes a goal for which you have no clue how you're going to get there. But at the same time, it is the best recipe to actually break the silos, transform the organizations. So what used to be thought of as being almost impossible suddenly becomes possible. And if you miss that very ambitious target by 10%, it's still a great performance. So that's the way we address it at Schneider Electric. We also realize that businesses cannot thrive unless both people and planet are striving at the same time. So it's really important, and I already alluded to that in my introduction, really important to tackle all E, environment, S, social, and G, governance dimensions all at the same time. It's not one or the other, it's the three at the same time for the SDGs which are relevant for your own business segment company.
Absolutely. Lovely. And I already see a kind of consensus on this is a common framework. So that's why it works very well for all stakeholders, even if the origins of this may be from policymakers. I hear everyone agreeing that targets and indicators, that it's science-based. And that's why I think the global community, not just the industry, is kind of gravitating around the SDGs. Philip, how does this resonate with the IEC?
That's, of course, the $1 million question that the members need to answer on an ongoing basis, I would say, because I think it's just picking up on the latest elements of the discussion. I think it's very important, a very important aspect. Of course, a lot has been written about, what strategies can do and what strategies cannot do. But I think we really are here in a territory, in a sense of a moonshot, of really an ambition that is really a stretch ambition, and where you set yourselves objectives and targets that you aspire for, and you have to rally to really find quantum leaps, really, to address that in a concrete way. Because I think there is a challenge that Virginie has mentioned, that you stay stuck at the sort of the top level of the top layer of the whole strategy or the SDG concept per se and the goals, and then you maybe you communicate, maybe you create interesting theoretical approaches, but at the end of the day, I think we will be measured against the output and the outcomes, what our standards, our conformity assessment services do to help the world to become more sustainable. Now that in itself, and you mentioned it, Vimal, I've joined the IEC less than 2 years ago. So the IEC is not a total newcomer to sustainability. If you look at the current master plan, of course, the sustainability aspect is already strongly enshrined at the very beginning of the mission. But what I see within the 2 years since I joined is, of course, an enormous acceleration, both outside but also inside the organization, in trying to get to the core, the gist of the matter, in how our core expertise can contribute to that, because I think the bottom line, the way I've now gotten to learn at the IEC, our core DNA is our incredible expertise, the expertise of 20,000 or more experts around the world who come together, who in a scientific and consensus-based way are hammering out solutions. Yes, of course, they come maybe with certain agendas. They are experts from certain industries. They can be experts from government, etc. So at the end of the day, I come back to my very initial statement. How can we make those different interests work together so that the output and outcome becomes even more relevant for the sustainability? And I think it, of course, also begs the question, how do we communicate about this? And how do we avoid getting entangled maybe in political discussions? I saw some hint about that in the chat just a few minutes ago, because we are a technical organization. We are a neutral platform with an incredible expertise which works in a science-based way, where we use technology going forward. And maybe we'll come to that a bit later, how important the technology is in the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals, because there's also political discussion about that, which is not always easy. And so there, I really think we are in a very privileged position, because in a sense, it is in our DNA. With the whole trend to an all-electric society and economy, I mean, where else could we be to contribute as the international standards and conformity assessment organization in the field of electrotechnology? So I think that's what I'm experiencing day by day, increasing traction, but of course also clearly an ongoing discussion, and not just easy answers to that. How can we stick to our guns, in a sense, with our incredible expertise, and make sure that is then used in the best possible way and is not diverted or, shall we say, pulled into a very tricky and unstable political discussion?
Absolutely. I think, Philip, you said it. I think one of the mandates for IEC and an organization like IEC is actually to be the platform for building consensus amongst all kinds of views. And I think this platform, especially when you look at a science-based, technology-based platform, I think the IEC is just at the right place when we look at the all-electric society and sustainability, because I think that's where our real reason for existence also is. Thank you, Philip. With this, I have an eye on the time we are taking. It's already 42 minutes. We are now in the second half of the time we had for our discussion. So may I request everyone to give me more crisp answers? But there are a lot of lovely questions that I have a list of. Let me connect with also your CEO visions and something that I captured through the videos that were presented. And Barbara, may I come to you? You, in that video by Jennifer Scanlon, your CEO, there was a mention of Watts of Love. First of all, what a lovely name. What is it about, and how does it connect with SDGs?
Thanks, Milan. I think this follows up so much on what Philippe was saying, and even the purpose of the IEC. I mean, the foundation of UL. UL started by safely electrifying the Columbian Exhibition, the World's Fair. When UL looked to kind of a signature organization that, again, used our human capital, engineers and technicians, Watts of Love was actually a foundation established to help bring solar-powered clean lights to the 1.3 billion people around the world that don't have electricity. And the amazing thing is, when we look at which SDG did this company, organization, or not-for-profit meet, it's all of them. Because what it does is, it gives them more light during the day. They don't have to use toxin kerosene, which has caused burns on their children's faces. It's terrible carcinogens within their bodies. So this organization could benefit from not simply bringing solar powered lights, but we wanted safe quality lights. So UL's engineers, pro bono, certified these solar powered lights and are now part of their distribution to some of the poorest unelectrified regions of the world. And talk about when you put your head down at night and you know you did good, when you see the way these lights change people's lives, giving them financial literacy to make their lives and their children's lives better. It's breathtaking. In fact, I think we have a video that you can put in the chat to share about the program. And I encourage everyone, if you're looking for something to do, find something you're passionate about. But this is an organization that can use all of us, all of our expertise, and really bring light and love to so many parts of the world that need it.
Lovely. Virginie, in Benoit Coquart's video, he's the CEO and chair of Legrand. He talks of a very specific expectation that he has from IEC and the standardization community to bring eco-design and circularity in everything. Why and how does that connect with your work, Legrand's vision of SDGs?
Thanks, Amal. Yeah, absolutely. I really enjoyed Benoit's video because I think he puts, the right topics. At Legrand, our objective is really to improve lives through what we do every day, by transforming spaces where people work, where people live, where people interact through our solutions. And sustainability is really it's not the only one, but it's an important element to it. We want to bring more sustainable solutions to those buildings and to those people. And in order to do that, we really need the support of the IEC, and we really need to put sustainability at the same level as safety, as quality in the products that we provide. And that's where I think, IEC has a huge role to play because he mentioned eco-design and recycled materials. You are not allowed everywhere in the world to use recycled materials. Sometimes it's the legislation doesn't enable it, the standards don't enable it. Eco-designs, there are certain elements of eco-design you're not allowed to do in certain places because the standards and the legislations are not there. And I think all of these are key solutions for a more sustainable world. So I think he really put the emphasis, yes, on IEC. We need IEC's help, but I think for a really good reason is we need the standards to evolve, to enable, to lift all those barriers, so that we can provide and even to push us to put more sustainable products on the market. I think that's really important because circularity is at the heart of more sustainable products. The list is super long, reuse, repairability, separability, all of those concepts are super important, but they are not always allowed. And really changing that, I think, is key to change the dimension. Instead of making circular economy a nice trial somewhere, we really want to make it a general way of designing products and of putting products on the market. And for that, we definitely need the support of the standards and therefore of the IEC.
Absolutely. Personally, I'm totally agreeing with you, and I would love to see more of circularity actually embedded into our systems and our standards which come out of IEC, so that the global community can actually, on the whole, address those. Xavier, question for you. In Jean Pascal's video, and he's the CEO of Schneider Electric Worldwide, he talks about the global compact, and I know that Schneider was one of the original signatories to it. How has been that experience? How has that worked for Schneider Electric in the sustainability context? And what would you feel are the next steps with global compact, which we can bring to the audience here?
So thank you for the question. So Global Compact is part of the United Nations, and it's basically, if you want, like the lighthouse, which is helping us, do things well. And Schneider has been part of the Global Compact at least for the past 25 years. In the beginning, it was on the grounds, of not incorporating, following the standards, not incorporating a harmful material, or not encouraging difficult work conditions. But gradually, Schneider understood that it was a lot better to be an actor than a spectator, right? So Schneider got involved very big time in many causes which have been led by Global Compact. For example, we were one of the first companies to go and join and lead what is called the He for She movement. That was about 6-7 years ago, where suddenly, in order to drive change, there was this big wave of, let's say, activity in order to encourage gentlemen in the company to express, to be vocal in public in front of their own colleagues on how they would support their female colleagues. And this was a tremendous success inside the company, basically to give guys not only the bad, the bad role, but also an acting role in order to change things. So that's one example. So Jean-Pascal Tricot is today at the board of Global Compact, and he has made commitments, a number of commitments over the years, the latest one being to be a leading company in the world of decent work, which we believe is one of the key topics which are still nascent, that still have a lot of flaws, in which all companies need to embark to eradicate once and for all modern slavery, to make sure that people have an equal chance wherever they are located in the world to access a better future. So that, of course, there is the gender diversity behind this, but so many other things. And in practical terms, inside Schneider Electric, one of these topics is evolving into principles that we utilize inside the company, and we call those principles of trust. And if you want, it's our contract between ourselves inside the company, but also with our business partners, our suppliers, our intermediaries, our customers. And this charter of trust is actually addressing topics in terms of principles of responsibility, ethics, if you like, addressing topics like safety, like cybersecurity, like quality, because quality is also a mandate of trust. People come to your company to buy products or whatever you have to sell because they trust that what they're buying from your own company is not going to blow in their face and harm anybody, right? And also sustainability. So principles of trust, again, ethics, quality, cybersecurity, safety, and sustainability. And this is what we use, if you want, as a framework inspired by Global Compact in order to drive the G part of our sustainability plan.
Brilliant. So let me take a different track with you, Philip. Can you give a concrete example of work that IEC has done or is doing right now, specifically for which is connected to the SDGs, or something to do with sustainability in a very focused manner, which is helping global community? Any example? Mm-hmm.
Yes, of course. I mean, we have a number of, and I'm not a technical expert, but we have, of course, many work items, many processes of standardization ongoing, where we are working towards energy efficiency, where we're working also towards, making electrical or electric technology work also in context of the environment they're in, without polluting or without creating negative impact on the environment. And I would maybe add an extremely important point, because it has got to do with sustainability as well. That is the whole aspect of security, of cybersecurity as well, because I think all our electrotechnical geniuses and what they do for the world, that will only last and sustain if we can keep those systems safe. And so maybe in that context, what comes into the realm as well, I don't want to make this a seminar about AI, but I think we have to clearly also address those aspects, how we can best make use of AI. And we have, of course, a number of relevant AI standards already today, but I think that the debate and also that work stream will only intensify, because it is ultimately about how we can make human-centric standards and human-centric conformity assessment systems that are not suddenly spinning out of control. So I would maybe sort of at that point in the end, of course, ultimately speaking about electric technology, about energy, nothing will work on this planet without energy access. And I mentioned earlier, when I worked or when I was a member of the Broadband Commission in the field of more of telecommunications, information technology, I mean, that's great, but none of this would work without electricity and power access. And so I think that is a sort of the absolute precondition. That's why I said initially, the way we are set up as an organization in the field of electrotechnology since 1906, I mean, we are, of course, it is a coincidence maybe now with everything driving towards an all-electric society and an all-electric economy, but we are really at the hotspot here. where we can make a huge difference.
Absolutely. Okay, I need to get into a bit of a rapid fire Q&A session with you guys. I mean, I'd love to keep extending this session, but which I know I cannot. So, so the next question, and maybe a short, crisp answer from each one of you. This is related to your own organizations and your journey with SDGs. What are your lessons learned in terms of what works, what doesn't work, so that to our audience, if they have to go on a similar journey, what they can learn or absorb from your experiences? What works, what doesn't work? Look at this, hey, ignore that, you know, that question. And maybe again, Barb, I'm coming back to you to kick off.
Sure. Quick,
Yes.
identify the strengths of your company, know what you are passionate about, and focus. As shared, the SDGs, the indicators and targets can be overwhelming. Choose ones that resonate with you and your stakeholders and focus on.
Lovely. Virginie.
Fully agree with what Barbara just said. So just to build on that, I think Xavier said it early on, and I think it's super important. A target should make you and your organization uncomfortable. So set yourself targets. If everybody around the room agrees, it's not the right target. It's not ambitious enough. So set targets that there should be discussions at board level. Oh, no, I cannot achieve this. And that's when you know you're setting the right target. You know, set uncomfortable targets. And don't be scared, because this is crucial. With this SDG 17 partnerships, you need to engage your value chain to really deliver value. It's going to be hard. It's hard. It takes time. It's complex. There again, very uncomfortable, but you really need to do it to deliver successful value for your company, but also to be, you know, contribute really to the SDGs.
Brilliant. Xavier.
Very quick. Make sure that your sustainability strategy is your company strategy and not an afterthought, not something that comes once everything else is done. Make it core of the company. And after that, it's a lot of trial and error, because not everything was invented in one day, but be persistent at it. But as long as it's the core business of the company, it will work and people will stay focused.
Brilliant. Philip, anything you want to share?
Yes, I would say, I think what is key, looking at it from an IEC perspective, is really that in this context of the SDGs, and not to stay just at the surface, that we really mobilize and hone our DNA, our existing DNA, because I think that is a key factor to actually come to concrete cases, and if I may say, business cases, because there is a business case for sustainability. And I think the more concretely you can work on such new standards and new conformity assessment systems, the better it will be for the companies that contribute to our work. But then, of course, again, looking at the common good, the better it will be ultimately for society.
Great learning. In fact, I can already see that all that you are saying, we should actually make a capsule video of do this, don't do this, and that should actually lead all stakeholders to really start focusing on SDGs. Brilliant. Thank you very much. Now we have another audience poll. Let me, Jean, could you put it up on screen, please?
Absolutely.
Yes. Thank you. Okay, here's the question. It's open for about 30 minutes, 30 seconds. Not minutes. I wish I had that time. Who can help impact SDGs most effectively? And I see a distributed audience. Very good. Interesting. Industry and private sector. I think we have our work cut out for us, Philip. Lovely. I think this gives us a flavor of how things are moving and what works. and the way the world is looking at organizations as they begin to impact. It's interesting to see that there don't seem to be too many takers for the UN organizations. Perhaps it's because it's seen as more a policy making setup, whereas IEC, which is part of, let's say, the industry, private sector, and platforms for standards development, I see that as an important aspect. I also see regulators and policymakers important at the national or regional levels, and I think that seems to be my interpretation of the way this poll has come out. Okay, the next question, and there are several quick questions, again, rapid fire. This is more about really getting down and dirty, and I just need your personal opinion, how you feel about it. Maybe a quick view on COP26. We keep reading that, it could have done more, there could have been more coming out of it. What's your personal take? One sentence take on COP26. What do you think, Barbara?
Definitely saying the right thing, devil's in the details, doing the right thing.
Okay. Doing the right thing is more important than just saying something. Okay. Virginie.
Harder, a lot harder.
Yes.
Vimal, there's no way I can do this in one sentence. Sorry, I'll try to be super short. But I think disappointing, but I think the issues are now out in the open. Everybody knows now country contributions are not sufficient. So I think that's super important. And a huge takeaway from me is companies have to step up because governments are not there yet. So we have to step up. We really, really have to prove that we as companies can be in that 1.5 degree trajectory, and that we can really be key contributors even when governments are not doing enough. So for me, that's a big takeout and not necessarily that negative.
That's a good point. Xavier?
Probably too much expectations out of a single event. I believe that it's always important for dialogue to be maintained. I also believe that businesses, cities, provinces, NGOs working every day and having dialogues aside from the main meetings, they are the driver of change, right? So to me, it's still positive. Sure. This issue is on the table now. Nobody's arguing against it anymore. Now, of course, there's much left to be done, but hopefully sure. Our companies and our community here will contribute greatly for it.
Absolutely, that's a great message for our audience. Philip.
Well, Vimal, people may know you were there, bearing yes. the IEC flag, thankfully, and I think I would say this is an opportunity for the IEC, and I would also say this is better than nothing, because yes, we have heard a lot about the shortcomings, etc. But let's never forget, we are in an extremely challenging process. This is the biggest challenge, maybe the biggest challenge of humanity, to get to grips with sustainability and with climate change. And so I see this as a next step. Of course, it's partly also new territory to us in terms of the setup. But again, thankfully, we had you there.
Yes, for me, it was not only an eye-opener, but I'm glad that I was able to at least take the message of IEC, the kind of platform, the consensus building that we do, and the large stakeholder group that we represent. I think that message definitely resonated, and I hope IEC will be represented there in all coming future COP events. Now it's time to open everything for the Q&A. So Sonia, Jean, could you tell me some of the upvoted questions? And I see one from Raj Vaglia in the UK. And his question is, would the common language benefit from an independent verification certification scheme to validate corporate SDG activities? So we've talked about a common language, but who's going to validate it? Is there a need for a conformity assessment program? Any of you wants to take this?
Well, actually,
Barbara.
I'd love to, and it's kind of that uncomfortable target that I'd like to challenge the IEC with. Definitely, there is great work being done because of electricity, product safety, product security and product sustainability. But the ESGs themselves are really a mess. There is no common element to measure, to monitor, to gain collective impact. We don't articulate it the same. We look at all different frameworks. I mean, I think the IEC, forget your middle word is electrotechnical. Consider you are the international body that can convene subject matter experts, that can drive consensus, and that can truly develop a standard. And if we had a standard for ESG, where we no longer compare apples to bananas, to pencils, to paper, we could collectively make certain we're all on the right path, and we can really combine our impacts to know how well we're doing when it comes to sustainable development.
Lovely. Philip, I think you have the mandate, change the name from electrotechnical to International Consensus Building Commission. There you go. Virginie.
Yeah, just I think being based in Europe, we already have so many, bodies checking a lot of things that we're doing. I would leave the SDGs slightly out of it. I'm not sure we need it, because I think the SDGs are more a guide for companies to focus. This is how large you can go, and then pick your battles. But I think what's super important, and it goes a little bit with what Barbara said, we need more transparency. I think, because we discussed Vimal before this, what about greenwashing? And I think
yes,
the way to prevent greenwashing and the way to align is being more transparent. And it's not just transparent giving your numbers, because I think we're all big companies doing that already, is giving perspective. When I say I do this green stuff, and we love the word green, how big is it in everything that you do? Is it 1% of what you do? Is it 10%? Is it 50%? And it's that transparency, I think, that might delay or prevent the need for extra verification and everything, which in Europe I feel is already pretty heavy on companies, but maybe not targeted at the right topics. I wouldn't add it to the SDGs, but I would definitely increase the requirements for companies to be transparent on what they do, be transparent on the products, but also give perspective. When I throw out a number of how great I am, how big is that greatness? Is it great on everything, or is it great on the small things?
Sure. So it's interesting you talk about greenwashing. This was a big topic which came up at COP26 also, because there were a lot of political dialogue around, hey, how do we kind of control greenwashing? People are not doing enough, but they're marketing the idea as if they're purely for green and sustainability. How do we control it? How have you seen this pan out in the industry? So, Xavier, any thoughts on greenwashing, and any message you have for the audience on how to avoid some of these pitfalls?
Well, greenwashing is the new generation of the climate deniers. Now, nobody wants to deny climate, but there's ways, if you not careful, of let's say making statements which actually either don't mean much or actually are false, right? Using the right words but delivering a false truth. So this is the devil is in the detail in that type of activity. So it's really important to have a common language, and this is, I believe, where IEC can play in its current name or future name, by developing new standards relating to sustainability, allowing a greater level of conformity to some essentials. It doesn't mean that everything will be mapped out for everyone, but at least a few essentials need to be mapped out. Compliance assessment tools to be promoted, basically, to be able to check on compliance. And this will, of course, it sounds boring when you look at it that way, but at the same time, it is probably one of the great tools that we have in order to increase the impact and increase the trust on what the business community does. So we need that trust. And so far, if you want, organizations like IEC, like UL, have allowed to establish the trust in the electrical world around, the former concerns, which are still concerned today, of safety, of reliability, etc., etc. Now the new attribute to our world is sustainability. So how do we make sure that this is on track and cannot be too easily deviated. I think that there's a very, very big part to play from IEC and UL for that matter on these topics.
Good point. Philip, any word on this?
Yes, yeah, I think, well, first of all, I don't think we're quite ready to change the name or the scope of our association. We just went through a rather intensive governance review process, which ended successfully by our members accepting the new statutes and rules of procedure. And of course, we also carefully looked at the object of our association there and made sure it's fit for purpose and oriented towards the future. But I wouldn't want to deviate too much from that. I think it could be quite a tricky discussion. But on a more serious note, I think what went through my mind, listening also to the different inputs now from Barbara, Virginie, and Xavier. I mean, with Lord Kelvin there also in the background on our meeting in our meeting room. Of course, we contribute, especially also by measuring things. I mean, we just heard from the Secretary General of the United Nations that they really would like to get experts together to measure things more precisely when it comes to climate change. And together with the ITU and ISO, we reached out also and offered our availability for that, because that's where we have a core expertise in measuring things and then, of course, producing standards and also assessing how the different systems work. So I think that, in my view, would be a core aspect here, a core contribution, because when it comes to greenwashing per se, I sometimes have a bit the impression that if you don't offer solutions for sustainability, which really they hurt the individuals or they hurt the companies, and you really have to demonstrate that you renounce half of whatever resource you use, otherwise it's not really real sustainability. I have to say, I'm not entirely convinced of that argument, because again, we are a technology, a science-based organization. We have a strong core DNA with know-how, and with new technologies, we can make things much more sustainable. So I think there again, I'm tempted to say, let's look at our really core roots, where our strength is. We have heard earlier in the poll, to which we could not, as panelists, could not contribute, but certainly I was encouraged to see that half of the votes were in favor of, or saying industry and the enterprises, they will make the biggest impact. And I think that's where I would be tempted to say, let's let's stick to our guns there.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, let me quickly go on to some audience questions. There are several of these. I know, I'm sorry, we'll not get enough time to answer those. Sonia, any top of the mind questions which you think we can try and capture today?
Yes, thank you very much, Vimal. And there are some good ones coming in. But one that I think we could answer today is around the work of the technical committees. And so it's if technical committees continue to support the SDGs in their work, there's potential value in adding credibility to this effort. How did the panel members view this as a value that we can build on?
Okay. The question is to all of you, you know, the standards work is done in technical committees. How can we build sustainability into the work of the technical committees? Barbara?
Well, I think it's a lot of what Philippe mentioned is where your core expertise lies. To build sustainability into the standard, definitely you want to bring in experts in sustainability. If you're talking about attributes of sustainability that address what makes a product safe, the circularity concept, what brings it from cradle to grave and everything else. I think you need those experts at it. Traditionally, you know, we would have looked for electrical engineers, we would have looked for safety engineers, and other type experts. There's a new field in sustainability, like a lot of us said. Virginia has gone back and studied it. There are a lot of new graduates in it. There is a science to sustainability in the same way there's a science to electricity and to physics. And so what I think we need to do is expand the representation on the task forces to bring that expertise to the table and begin talking about it.
Wonderful, thank you. Sonia, another question?
Yes, thank you. And so this was partially answered. There was a long question put in about political the political situation that exists around the SDGs. But then there was some follow-up dialogue too. And it's been stated that IEC is a neutral organization and therefore not interested in political conflicts and issues. Also, it's been stated that the SDGs have been written for governments confirming their political intent. So the question is, how are we solving that conflict if we need to be technically neutral?
Anyone wants to take this? How does IEC ensure technical neutrality?
Vimal, if I can maybe give it a try
Sure.
at this one. I mean, because I think whilst of course we don't want to be entangled in political discussions that would sort of empty the content of our work, the core know-how we develop or have and use to develop standards and conformity assessment services, we are of course in a politicized environment, and we are in a multi-stakeholder environment. So for me, I think it is important that we put all the work we do in a multi-stakeholder setting. That doesn't mean that you become politicized, but I think when you propose solutions, when you develop also new approaches, new technical solutions, you can't just ignore the world around you. So I think that, and that's why I think the engagement with all sorts of stakeholders, the increasing engagement, not just as a technical community per se, but really enshrined in our real life at different levels, becomes more and more important. I mean, we have today a much better visibility, I think, also towards policymakers and regulators, because they see the value in what standards can do. We had for the first time in October at the G20 summit in Italy, a communique by the G20 leaders at the end of the summit that acknowledges and recognizes the importance of international consensus-based standards. I think that's quite an achievement, because we have not been on the map as far as all those stakeholders are concerned even 2 years ago. And now we've had a second chance to participate after last year when Saudi Arabia is hosting it now in Italy. So I think we have to put that in perspective. And I'm also, of course, very aware that sometimes the stretch goals and the uncomfortable goals that we have just, I think, heard a lot of support for also in the chat, they still sometimes create difficult situations also for the work, because at the technical level, that stretch goal may not yet have been trickling down. And so that this is all a process where you have to go back and forth also within our stakeholders. So and true. I think you have to be open. I mean, we have this technical instrument of liaison requests. I think it's really important that we demonstrate that we're open and transparent also by taking all those requests seriously, which I think by and large we do. But the multi-stakeholder environment, I think, will only become more complex, and we have to acknowledge that.
Exactly. Thank you. We have only about 12 minutes left, and I have two important concluding questions for the panelists. May I propose that the other questions which are still not answered from the audience, we will make a note of these and I'll circulate these to the panelists, and we will make sure that the answers to these are collated. And because we have your email IDs with us, we will make sure that all the audience are informed by email whenever those answers are compiled and available. Now I want to come back on two questions that are close to my heart, and I think Philip will agree with these questions. The first is, anything specific that you have for IEC, either an expectation, advice, or something you want to address to IEC and the IEC community? Barbara, anything specific, expectation from IEC, question for IEC? We have Philip here with us.
I expressed one, of course, but it wasn't the name change, it was the scope expansion. But I think it all roots in, we recognize and never underestimate the power of the IEC and the skills and expertise the IEC brings. It's not simply within the electrical technical field. It is in convening. It is in an independence as a body. And it is also engaging dialogue and conversations. And I think a great start was the CEO videos, this campaign for the IEC, and and then this panel discussion. But it shouldn't stop here, because like we said, it's not simply talk, it's walk, the
Exactly.
talk, the walk. I think the IEC has to keep this going, and don't hesitate to have these conversations at the working group, task force levels. What does sustainability mean to them? Although we all agree with now global warming, the importance of it, what it means to our civilization, I don't think everyone necessarily agrees safety and sustainability and security go hand in hand. And that is an extension of the requirements for products and system certification. And so have those dialogues also at your local levels and see what the members want to do with it. And then really use the power of the IEC to make it happen. It is amazing all you've done when we talk about those goals and those stretch goals. Who would have ever thought to design standards to make all design products safe? That was a stretch goal, and yet it's been accomplished. So continue to push yourselves and really look at how sustainability plays into your safety mission of a safety world, and then let the dialogues continue, especially at the committee and the working group.
Wonderful. Thank you. Virginie?
I actually have nothing to add. Barbara has said it all. Fully agree with everything she said.
Brilliant. Thank you. Xavier?
I won't repeat exactly the same. For me, IEC is an agent or a guardian of trust in our business. So this is where IEC needs to step up. In the past few years, we have seen the emergence of the science-based topic, which is now very prominent on target. So IEC can be the science-based side of the electrical world. So grab this opportunity. This is great to increase the trust and the confidence that our markets will have. And this is where all the technical committees, etc., can contribute greatly to this increase of trust.
Lovely answers. And, you know, my notes show me, don't underestimate power of IEC. IEC is the guardian of trust, science-based side of this whole dialogue on sustainability. Philip, your take on this?
Well, I think my take, almost really the most important point is what Barbara just said, in my view, namely to also, have the discussions and hammer out approaches at the local level. I mean, we are a member-based organization. We are a bottom-up organization, and we can only do as much as our members want us to do. And the more the members themselves have already done a lot of groundwork locally or nationally, because we have national committees, they nominate experts, and then of course we have different stakeholder groups that come to the table. I think this sort of, not consolidation is maybe not the right word, but really the exchange and then the preparation of all the work that will take place at the international level in the IEC is much better if it has a solid base at the local level inside all the members. Now, all the members have not the same sort of point of departure, but ultimately, I mean, we feel certainly a good traction now also in members coming together with maybe with different priorities. And we are, as we speak, we are working under the leadership of our president-elect, Jo Kops, on a new strategy, very much also with a bottom-up involvement. And we hope that at the beginning of next year, we will be ready to put that strategy to the members for approval. And that's why I think it's so important what Barbara said with the local level. That's also my experience when I worked, for instance, in government, engaging with the society at large, and that can only make us stronger.
Excellent. Thank you, Philip. I think that brings us together at this kind of confluence of all these ideas, and that's a great summary of what IEC can do, what the mandate for IEC. So now, last question to the four on this panel. That one golden nugget, that one summary of your entire experience of what really has worked for you, or that one thing that you have avoided, so that has led to success. So that end of this session, our audience get 4 golden nuggets to kind of work on. Take these 4 golden nuggets and you are in the right direction to work with SDGs. It is, individuals, all kinds of stakeholders on this call. So anything that you feel is that broad message. Again, I come to you, Barbara, to kick off.
Ramel, I think it's important that we note we're all in this together on a shared mission. No one organization, country, government, business, or individual owns this planet on which we all live. The responsibility for its future, a prosperous, sustainable future, and the well-being of its inhabitants lies within each and every one of us. And it will only be through our collective, measurable actions, humanitarian behaviors, and trust for one another that a safer, more secure, and sustainable world will be realized.
Lovely. Thank you. Virginie.
I think an important message for everyone is we are not perfect. None of us are. And as organizations, we still have a lot to do. We still have a lot to learn. We will make mistakes, but I think it's okay to make mistakes. And I think everybody should be okay with that. Look at the SDGs, set yourself targets, ambitious targets, and, try to achieve them. I'll give you one small example because it's something we haven't discussed at all today is diversity is a huge target of ours. We're super, super focused on increasing diversity. And I think in the electrical industry, it's a really important topic because diversity is not there, not enough. So, the SDGs allow you to look at topics you might not naturally look at and try to set yourself those targets and try to really move on those topics. And each organization has a role to play, but as Barbara just said, we're in this all together. So try, test, fail, try again, and we'll all succeed together. But we need to all collectively definitely move on that and go beyond what we think we can do.
Very nice. I'm glad you talked about diversity because this was one of the questions I wanted to pose, but due to paucity of time that kind of I could ask, but you brought it home for us because I think in our industry, generally we are not celebrating diversity as much as we, and I think the good thing is IEC is already conscious of it and is working very assertively in trying to address this issue. Xavier.
Well, thank you. So the SDGs are here, as you all understood, to give us the framework and the goal, the direction that we all want to reach collectively. So that means that every single company, organization around the globe wants to make some impact. It's all about impact, how to change things. And our experience that best-in-class companies that create impact actually have 5 essential principles in place. First, they strategize, which means that they define ambitious goals, they measure the progress. That's number 1. Number 2, they perform. There is an equal need for financial performance and extra financial performance. Having financial performance gives the foundation for doing good things. There is no long-lasting company that does not have a financial performance that can do good for very long. Third point, address all stakeholders. It's not only about your own organization. You are totally responsible. We are totally responsible. If you want to clean your own house, nobody else can do it on your behalf. But the responsibilities of the companies is to bring together all the stakeholders, especially your business stakeholders and the investors and the employees, etc. Fourth is to work on all ES and G dimensions. Work on the climate story, which is the most pressing and urgent thing that we see. What we see less are all the social issues that are underlying. These are less vocal, less publicized, but equally damaging to our future. And finally, don't think that somebody is going to invent the recipe for you. If you are part of a large organization, your corporate will not give you exactly the recipe for doing your thing locally. Think local, play with your own weapons, and this will be the best way with your own colleagues, local colleagues, to make a difference. So these would be my guidelines and nugget, as you put it.
Lovely. I think you've given the whole recipe for strategy. Philip.
Yeah, I would mention 3 points. The first is that we really leverage the know-how, the science and technology know-how that we have further, and create cases that prove that this is a case for the different stakeholders to benefit from. It can be also a business case, or it must be a business case, looking at it from an industry perspective, but ultimately the test and the measurement, of course, will be society overall. That one can really only be successful going forward if we digitalize. I think we have actually spoken quite little today about digital processes, but I think it's also quite clear, if I think about the ongoing work on the future strategy, that the digital processes, digital solutions will be key to accelerate and also make sustainable solutions going forward. We know that from experience. There's enough evidence for that, how much digitization facilitates and supports sustainability. And the last point, I think that has already been mentioned by all the co-panelists, that we recognize the interdependencies. We are in an age of interdependency. That's not even a phrase I have coined. That is actually the title of a report by a high-level panel to the UN General Secretary on digital cooperation. And so we have to acknowledge, recognize those interdependencies, and then engage with the stakeholders that are around us, because, as Barbara has said, no single organization can do it all.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. I think great 4 nuggets. And if I may take the liberty of adding a 5th one, which I, coming from India, a developing economy, I have felt it's about communicating. I think communicate. And if you think you have done enough, communicate some more. I think it's all about debate, discussion, these kind of panels. Get all kinds of stakeholders around the table, because then we will know what really are the needs and where the consensus lies. Thank you very much, panelists. I think you've done an amazing job, far better than I had even visualized. We had 5 golden nuggets. We are in this together. We are not perfect. We will make mistakes, but look for ambitious targets, uncomfortable targets. The first time that I've heard this term, but I think such a brilliant way to capture it. And Xavier, thanks for this 5-step process of strategizing toward this. And perhaps those could be lessons for life also. Strategize, perform, involve all stakeholders, and think local. And Philip, you talking about society overall and talking about the digitalization, the coming phase. And I bring my personal experience from India of communicating, connecting, and working together with this. Thank you so much. Really appreciate this. Can I invite all the panelists to switch on their cameras and switch on their microphones? And let's give a round of applause to each one of us together. Can I invite Sonia, Sylvia, Jan also to switch on your cameras, please? And I hope someone can take a picture of this session. So a round of applause to all of you. Thank you very much. And to conclude this session, of course, and a big thanks to you, a big thanks to all the audience who have stayed on an extra 3 minutes with me on this. To conclude, let me do what I love to do. Can we all make our hearts like this? All of you. You know, this is with love to each one of you, to all the audience, and to the very idea of sustainability. I hope someone is taking a picture. And to all the audience, could you please put in the comments field something about an icon, emoji, if you have enjoyed this session. Thank you very much. Thank you all of you. Really appreciate this session. Thank you so much. Good luck.
Thanks, everyone.
Goodbye. Have a lovely evening or morning.
See you soon.
Goodbye.
Thanks, Bimal.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you, Bimal.
Thank you. Goodbye.